Es que, ¿sabes qué? Necesito que venga Pancho y que me ayude, porque si no esto va a ser un...
¿Puedes ir por Pancho de verdad? Es por, ajá, para resolver. ¡Vamos! ¡Oli, foco!
Que salga bien, ¿eh?
Gracias, Arturo. Ah, ya me acordé.
Vamos a hacer.
Jóvenes de prepa, les pido que se vayan.
Chicos de prepa, por favor, hagan 3 filas, cuarto, quinto y sexto.
O sea, tengo que voltear vertical. Porque si no, desde aquí, o sea, me parece esto. No alcanzo a ver cómo se ven los otros. Pero si lo giro, se ve al revés. Ajá. O sea, tendría que estar en vertical, pero pues, nos va a cortar todo lo de... No sé cómo... Ya, o sea, es que se está abriendo y está el link. Este es para que se voltee la cámara.
La bronca ahorita es que solo puedes traer.
Pues sí, o sea, tendré que hacer esto. no para voltearlo. Porque o sea, aquí me dice que lo tengo que girar, o sea, tiene que estar vertical. Para grabar en YouTube, no desde aquí. Pues la vez pasada no tuve no sé por qué ahorita me está saliendo esto. La de Cristina Barros funcionó perfecto. La anterior lo grabamos verticalmente, pero esta pues, así se ve. Bueno, lo que podemos hacer.
Si no lo ven.
Es lo que estamos viendo.
La bronca es que, o sea, si alguien lo está viendo en su compu,
Deja la transmisión tantito y lo arreglamos.
Están grabando sin consentimiento.
Va a tener una hora.
o sea, cuando lo giro así, ahorita te tiene que llegar. Ya me parece distinto. ¿Viste?
Sí.
O sea, yo creo que es para transmisión en móvil.
Ajá.
Ya. Ahorita tiene que salir. ¿Es un hijo?
Güey, re. Seguramente va a venir. Güey, que vayamos.
Ya no sé segunda.
Ahí atrás.
guapo vienes.
¿Cómo la quito el nombre que estaba y pongo el nuevo?
Una joya.
Manuel Chávez como...
Ay, sí, Manuel Chávez.
Nuestro hijo. Lo quito.
El segundo de arriba. Bueno, este ya está. ¿Qué segundo?
Sí.
Segundo es
El Luis de Lera.
Segundo, avance por favor. Segundo
Luis de Lera Chávez.
No
quiero pasar
No,
primero.
falta un segundo. Avance por favor.
Hashtag.
Hola. ¿Está mandando? Hola. Porque me gusta qué parte de.
Coco, graba Matías. Sí, grábalo.
Manuel. Ayúdale, Manuel. Está bien, ¿no? Ok, va. ¿Alguien más de cuarto?
¿Qué está yendo tu Pancho?
Pancho está allá.
¿Dónde?
Pancho está acá arriba.
¿Tú sabes que podrías tener mi vida algo más independiente?
Poco es como la que pasilla. Es que es algo que nada más la otra azul.
¿Mm?
Es como la que pasilla primero, pero la otra azul.
Coco.
Un volado, espérate.
¿Qué probabilidad hay? ¿Qué probabilidad hay?
Vale, está bien.
Luis, ¿qué probabilidad hay?
De que no vaya.
No, güey, ya.
Ya están todos anotados. ¿Qué? ¿Qué con ese gesto de desaprobación?
Pues esto, porque también sabes que. Ay, cállate, pues.
Fórmalo y ya me avisas cuando estén, porfa. Ya me dejó con los terceros.
La fila
Están haciendo la transmisión. ¿Ya está?
Ya lo están viendo allá.
Bien, ya estamos.
Oye, ¿te puedo, Rosita me puede ayudar a tomar fotos? La cámara también estaba allá arriba, no sé dónde la dejaron.
¿Sabes si ese micrófono es el que va a agarrar porque se va a presentar?
Yo creo que sí, no sé.
Pícolo. Donde está Adriana numerito.
Y es que les digo que se la borran porque
Ven,
Ok, chicos,
ven. Déjate de prepa.
bien a Lucía que se recorra, por favor.
Muy buenos días a todos. Estamos terminando el acomodo. Les pedimos a los profesores que nos ayuden a privilegiar el lugar para los chavos. Por favor, ya ahorita vemos, en teoría la vemos todos. ¿Tres allá arriba? Ok. Tres allá arriba. Donde está Delia, Gina, 1, 2. Por eso no. A ver, Slade.
¡Ah, es en vivo! ¡Métete!
Bien. Chuchu, que nada más quede la luz acá. Apágame la luz. Bien. Buenos días a todos. Les vamos a pedir, o te voy a pedir que me ayudes con tu silencio para dar las primeras indicaciones antes de iniciar nuestra conferencia del día de hoy. Vamos a ver. Indicación según nuestro protocolo de protección civil. Si suena o no suena la alerta sísmica, la indicación es: nos quedamos sentados en posición de seguridad, que es una mano en la nuca y la otra en la cabeza, y nos inclinamos un poco sobre nuestro lugar. La indicación según el protocolo de protección civil en esta ocasión será esa. Principalmente la gente de arriba, les pido eso, por favor. Nadie salimos hasta que el equipo de búsqueda y rescate nos dé la indicación de salida. Y saldremos según nos los indiquen. ¿Sí quedó claro para todos ustedes eso? Sí. Ok. ¿Sí, gente de prepa que está allá arriba? Sí. Ok, muchas gracias. Bien. Bien, habiendo dicho esto, el día de hoy no voy a dar en presentación, porque quien nos va a apoyar a presentar a nuestro invitado del día de hoy es la profesora Ingrid, ¿sí? Que nos va a apoyar también lo que te vamos a pedir justo a ver es muchísima atención a todo lo que el día de hoy nuestro invitado te quiere compartir. Tiene una historia de vida interesante que creo que es importante que la podamos escuchar. Nos va a compartir algunos videos, también veámoslos, y por favor estén atentos. Entonces cedo el micrófono a Ingrid para que ya nos haga la presentación oficial de nuestro invitado de hoy.
Or set them on airplane mode, because they interfere with the sound system. So that's very important, okay? So now, welcome to a very, very special day here at school, because we have a very, very special guest. He is an American physician. He's also a comedian. He is a social activist, and he's also a clown and an author. He has written at least one book. We're very happy to have him here. So please help me welcome Mr. Hunter Touchdown.
Can you turn off the spotlights, because I like to see your faces? And I feel like this is a police interrogation. So all the lights up. And these lights ideally off. And while they're trying to work that out, there you are. Thank you. Before I begin, I tell every audience I answer all my mail. I am a relic. I've never used a computer. I don't know how. I've never had a smartphone, and I promise myself I will never have one. I write letters. I write 300 to 600 letters every month for 35 years. I write 139 countries because I've lectured and performed in 82 countries. And I'm caught up, even though most of my time I am traveling. So, it needs to be in English. I'm sorry. Stupido. One of my 50 Spanish words to describe myself. And the most important thing is, I need your return address so I can read it. I hate it when a letter comes back and it says, addressee unknown. I normally can read handwriting well because I've answered 300,000 letters. So please, if you need a friend, if you have ideas no one will listen to, or you have projects that you would like some input, or just want to hate me, write me a letter. I usually answer very quickly. And if you think about it, I grew up as a stamp collector. So if you put pretty Mexican stamps on the letter, it's more fun for me than the everyday stamp. Ironically, I will tell you to find my address on patchadams.org. I don't know how to get to patchadams.org, but I know you do. And my address is there. Write me. Please do not hurt alone. Great. Now I want to thank all the people involved in bringing me here. And if I am talking too fast, tell me to slow down. Please. There are a lot of things I want to share with you and to have time for questions. What I would like to do is to give you a little bit of my history, to give you an idea of where I came from and how I got here. So, I am 73. I was born as a World War II baby. My father was a professional soldier. Being a soldier, it destroyed his soul, so he did not play with me. Partly because half of his life he was in wars, World War II and the Korean War, and the other half because war destroys many people. In our country, 6,000 military veterans, people who were soldiers, kill themselves every year, which is more soldiers than die in our wars each year. And the U.S. is always at war. Okay, so I grew up a weird, nerd, dweeb, dork, sissy boy. Okay, I never did athletics. I was extremely good in school, and I was strange. So I started clowning in my life, not to be funny, but I was the kind of boy that bullies beat up. And my way of stopping the bullying was to make them laugh, because a bully doesn't hit their fool. So, what a great thing to discover that being silly prevents you from being hurt. I was an extremely good student. At the age of 16, my father died from war. It's one of the reasons that first on my list, I work for nonviolence, for peace and justice. It broke my heart because I never really got to know him. We were living overseas. Most all of my 16 years with my father was in the military, on military bases outside the United States. So I didn't really know the United States. He died in 1961. We moved to the southern states, which had not yet given our black population human rights. And so my life totally changed in a public park at a public drinking fountain, public meaning everybody, in 1961, and the sign said, whites only. And I realized my country was fake, and religion was fake, and that a person could actually walk by this sign and not tear it down. And so, I was a fragile child, and at 16, I wept and wept and wept. I got in trouble in high school. I was in a city with 22% black population. I went to a public school, public meaning everybody, that was whites only. And so the N-word, which I can't even say, was said many times because the civil rights movement was happening. And every time I said it or heard it said in class, which was very frequently, I would scream really loud and really long until I saw all the students hate me. And then I would say, you can say that word, but I have to do this. And so the bullies would beat me up after school. So 3 times in my senior year in high school, I was hospitalized in a mental hospital wanting to kill myself. I didn't know what to do about this racism, and I didn't want to live with it. I hated the medication I was on. My psychiatrist was an idiot. And between the 2nd and 3rd hospital, I was present in Washington, D.C. for Martin Luther King's most famous speech, I Have a Dream. Hundreds of thousands of nonviolent revolutionaries, and I instantly got it. You don't kill yourself, stupid. You make revolution. Ah, what a word. Unfortunately, historically, violence has made the word revolution sound like an ugly word, but most revolutions have been nonviolent. For example, all of the artistic revolutions have been nonviolent. And so, at 18, I decided that I would be a revolutionary for peace and justice and care for all people everywhere. And this is when I found out my mother gave me the greatest gift I think a parent can give their child. She gave me self-esteem. I love me. It wasn't protecting me at the time, but when I decided and realized that I would be an instrument for peace and justice and care, I didn't have to develop into a person that could do it. I only had to decide what I was going to do. So, one thing that I decided very quickly was, well, if I'm having a bad day, that doesn't help anybody, so I decided to never have another bad day. So at 18, I decided to never have another bad day, and I've now had 55 years without a bad day. I'm a dangerous person. And in deciding to have a bad day, I had to decide who I was going to be, what kind of personality. So I chose 6 qualities that all the time I would be happy, funny, loving, cooperative, creative, and thoughtful. And I think I've done this every day for 55 years, and it's given me a beautiful life. Everything that you like or imagine you like about me came from that decision. I wasn't a person that had to study ever. Everything was academically easy, so I had a lot of free time. And so I left the 3rd hospital on fire. To give you an example, 2 hours a day, every day for the next 2 years, I called up the wrong numbers on the phone because we had phone books. And I just look at a number, call it up, and see how long I could keep this person on the phone. I got really good. And I did that 2 hours a day for every day for 2 years. And I went into elevators in Washington, D.C., where I live, and would ride up and down elevators for hours, 3 or 4 hours a week, because once that door shuts, there they are, your people. and they can't run or hide. Why don't you come up here and I'll demonstrate. Can you come up here, please? Actually, this gentleman here. Yes, thank you. All right, Pablo, yes. Okay. Pablo is a man on an elevator. And there's a wall here, so he can't run. Traditionally, relax, Pablo. Traditionally, the elevator door opens and you turn around and show the person your culo. Okay? This doesn't do anything. It basically says, I don't want to know you. So, I did, the first experiment I did, the door would open and I would do this. Most of the time it was an adult, so it was a little and I'm looking them in the eye. And I wanted to find out what kind of person I had to be so they wouldn't be frightened. And I did it with thousands upon thousands of people. And again, as an extreme extrovert, it was very easy to start to engage in loving the world. Let's give Pablo a big hand for bravery. Thank you, Pablo. I went to hate groups like the KKK because I was white, there was no problem, and I had short hair at the time, to try to understand how does a person hate for color? It's nothing, it's color. And yet, you could hear hatred in races so bad that killing a black person was a good thing. From hatred for color. And I want to be a peace activist, so I wanted to study hating. Well, during this time I started to wear costumes because men's clothes are boring. And I was reading a huge number of books. My library is 40,000 books. I've read a lot of your literature and literature from all over the world. I'm a literature fanatic. I know 4 hours of poetry up here because I love how language can let you know what you're thinking and the thinking that great writers have had throughout history. And it was reinforcing everything I was. And I was asking myself, what do I want to be with myself? What kind of job is a love job for men? Because at that time, you know, men, we had manly jobs. And I thought, maybe a doctor is a love job. I didn't know that most doctors were rude and arrogant. I thought they were there to serve humanity. So I entered medical school in 1967 to be a doctor. However, within a month I saw nothing was good about a hospital. They were hierarchical. The doctor, 95% of my professors were rude, arrogant, horrible human beings. And they were a doctor. The hospitals were unfriendly, they were boring. And I said, I can't work here. This is not for me, this hospital. And to tell you the truth, that's hospitals all over the world. I have clowned and lectured in hospitals in 82 countries, and I haven't found one happy hospital. Not one. It might interest you that not one medical school in the world teaches compassion, which is what I thought the practice of medicine was, the practice of compassion, to care for another human being. So I got in a lot of trouble in medical school. A doctor would be rude, and I noticed everybody was silent. It's not my style to be silent, so I would go, nice rudeness, doctor. You really insulted that patient beautifully. I hope I'm a big, strong doctor like you when I grow up. So I didn't have a lot of friends on the medical staff. But I spent the 4 years of medical school designing a hospital. In the United States, medicine, your medical bill is the #1 reason you lose your home, and 70% of bankruptcies. So medicine isn't a profession, it's a greedy, horrible business for rich people. And so the first design of the hospital is everything is free. So I've been in medicine 51 years, I've never made any money. Yay. One reason I'm a happy doctor. But it also means you can do it how you want to do it. I was trained, and all over the world, doctors are trained to be a family doctor in 7.8 minutes. In Spain, 5 minutes. And you can't know even the most boring person in 5 minutes. So I said, I'm going to do it my way. So my first interview with an adult patient is 4 hours long. I ask them every question sensitive to life. So I usually know them better than anybody else in their life. I ask them the most personal questions, and not because they're the most personal, but usually most personal questions are really important in relationship to their health. To give you an idea, almost no couples are happy. My estimate globally is that 15% of married people are happy. And so, how did I ask a patient to find out how their marriage was going? Without them any warning, I would say, tell me about your kissing. And you can instantly see on their face if it's good or not good. Just to give you an idea. In medical school, I did not get one lecture on health or care, and I thought I was working in a health care system. And so, not one lecture on diet or exercise or love or spirit or any of those things. But I made sure that my practice was full of it. So when I graduated in 1971, no one gave me a hospital. Darn. So, being a child of the 60s, which you can probably get some indication of, I haven't had a haircut in 51 years, that I started a commune. So 20 adults moved into a 6-bedroom house. 3 of us were doctors with our children and said we were a hospital. We did it 12 years. We had 500 to 1,000 people in our home each month, with 5 to 50 overnight guests a night. Now I know you can do the math. 6-bedroom house, 20 adults and their children living there, 5 to 50 overnight guests a night. You're right, there was interaction. In those 12 years, we never gave a psychiatric diagnosis or a psychiatric medicine. We were interested in mental health, not enriching pharmaceutical companies. And I remember how much I hated the psychiatric medicine that they gave me. After 12 years and not a single donation to build our fantasy and radical hospital, we knew what sells in America is fame. Certainly not intelligence, just look at our president. I'm not sure our country knows anything about intelligence. So, much to my regret, I knew I would have to become famous, because that's what sells. That's why a ball player who is nothing is a multimillionaire, and a school teacher who is the most important person of the human society gets a low pay because there's no fame attached to education. And a ball player, I guess, kicks a ball. And that's why they're a multimillionaire. So I went public, closed our doors, because I was immediately asked to lecture and perform. And so that's what I've done since then for 250 to 300 days every year. And all over the world, as many as 12 lectures in a day. So within a year, I was feeling an emptiness in myself for not doing care. I found when our hospital was open, I had an infinite capacity to care for another person. And lecturing and performing, I wasn't getting that fed. So I thought, what about a clown trip? And so 35 years ago, I started our clown trips. And our first trips were to the Soviet Union because basic peace work is love your enemy. And everything the U.S. society was saying, the Soviets are dangerous, they're your enemy. And I don't have any enemies. And so this year will be the 35th year of that clown trip to Russia. And we've added. And so what I thought I would do, this is more my doctor self. I thought I would show you my clown self. I've clowned every day, really, since I was 18. I will tell you this, 35 years ago, I decided to only wear clown clothes because I asked myself, how can I stop public violence? And I know if I see violence, which is everywhere in the United States, that going up and saying, you know, you really shouldn't hit that person and scream at them, that doesn't do anything. But I found that the clowning can really change it. And so if I see a person in a grocery store beating their child or a man throwing his date against the car, I take this very conservative look and back up and kind of do a superhero thing where I pull up my pants leg like this, I pull up my pants leg like this, I pull up my pants like this, and I take off my glasses like this, and I put on what I call the triple threat. Triple is 3. Notice the convenience, okay, and here is my cheek spreader. Notice the convenience. Oh yeah. And here I put in my Billy God teeth. And of course, my logo. And so now, if I'm in the grocery store and I see a parent and child fighting, I go, and just doing this stops the fight. And if I see a fight between a man and his date, I go up and stand next to him and put my arm around. And so in 35 years doing this, 100% of the time has stopped the fight. And that's why I embarrass myself so. I'm happy to say, excuse me. Are my teeth still there? Yeah. Thank you. I did mention to a couple of people who were going to come up here and let me demonstrate something with my moco. And so, can you come up here, please? And you also? Nadia and Matias, okay? Nadia here. Kneel down on the floor. No, kneel. Kneel down, yeah, right here. And you kneel down here.
Kneel.
Okay, we'll do Nadia first. Now put your head back, Nadia. And open your mouth. Did someone get a picture of that for Nadia?
We did!
Who got a picture?
It's over here.
Because At first, Nadia said no. But then I told her the rest of her life, if she's having a difficult time with a boyfriend or at work, or with her life, if she looks at the picture of taking my mocha, she will laugh. And now you understand that, yes? Make sure, you're going to make sure she gets a picture, okay?
Yes.
Let's give them a big hand. I now want to show a few films. You know, my clown life is really important to me because my hospital is still not built, and I need to go to suffering. I need to do it. 5 times I've taken clowns into war. I've probably held 2,000 children dying of starvation within a week in my arms. I work here with that. And I want to show you, first I can tell you that anyone, maybe, why don't you come up and just tell your story before these films, okay? Yes. We are very lucky to have someone who has been to our place in West Virginia, where we're building our hospital. And she's also come on a clown trip. So just say something that you want to say.
Okay. My English is not that good.
You can say it in Spanish.
¿Sí?
Yeah.
Yo estaba en la universidad, a mí me gustaba mucho la psicología social y pues encontré que podía ir un mes a la escuela de Patch Adams a estudiar. Entonces, que tenía 19 y me fui un mes, fue cuando lo conocí. Estudié un mes con ellos, es difícil porque justamente como que te enfrentan mucho a muchos esquemas que existen en nuestra sociedad, muchas cosas que tenemos como marcadas, que creemos que tenemos que hacer, que creemos que así tenemos que ser, por cómo la gente lo piensa, por cómo nosotros lo pensamos, y cómo es que podemos construir como algo más a partir de ser como amable, de ser amoroso, de ser diferente, de hacerlo distinto, ¿no? Entonces, bueno, ahí lo conocí. Y el siguiente año empezaron a hacer los clown trips aquí en México. ¿Por qué me pones música? Y pues ya empecé, fui al primer clown trip en México. Vamos a diferentes, no sé, hospitales, vamos a una casa hogar, vamos al pueblo de Santa Fe y clowneamos ahí con diferentes payasos de todo el mundo, que vienen de todo el mundo. Y pues ahí fue cuando me empecé como a involucrar en todo eso y me di cuenta que lo puedes hacer en todas partes. O sea, en todas partes, por más que no estés vestido como de payaso ni nada, puedes hacer una diferencia como siendo amoroso, siendo diferente o teniendo una vista diferente hacia las personas. Entonces ya creo que
So before I show you these films, I want to say that I have clowned every day for 55 years. But when I started to go on clown trips, I said, I want to be a character. How do I make a very tall man? Oh. Hello? Hello? Oh, okay. How can I make a very large man not frightening? And so I said, many people who have clowned a long time become a character that is not themselves. And I worked with disabled children and adults when I was a teenager. And so I became a Down syndrome adult. And the reason is because of all the people I've ever met, the adults with Down syndrome are unconditionally loving and they're funny. And that's in every country because every country has them. So I'll just show you the clown character I have been now for 35 years. I estimate I've been at 10,000 deathbeds, meaning people are dying very soon, and I go there. And it's different than the triple threat. So I have it in here. So I have my pacifier. Voila, my nose. The nose, as soon as I put my nose on, I know the and I wear a chicken on my head. And I have a pescado mi amigo. And I walk around and see people, and they see me, I guess. And also, inside of my pants, the number one funny thing in the world is pedo. Every country all over the world laughs very loud and very long about pedo. And I know my mother wished that wasn't true. Would anyone here like to fart on me? Okay, then I'll just show you the whoopee cushion. Nobody?
Here.
Where? Oh, here. So come up. You don't jump on it, you lower yourself on it, okay? Are you ready? Thank you very much. Go. Muchas gracias. Thank you very much. And you know, they create whoopee cushions for all occasions. In this pocket I carry what I call the grandmother tooth. Because grandmothers don't make a loud one. And they still fart. The grandmother. And I also love calzoncito. It might interest you, I have had 2 presidents of countries in my calzoncito with me. And this is the power of clowning. Because in your clothes, you'll never get a president in your underpants. So, well, yeah. So, I think we'll start the movies, and if I bring Patch back here, he knows how to speak better. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to show you 4 situations. Maybe I'll sit in this chair. And here we can have the lights off if you want. This first film, and wait, let me introduce it. is from Arequipa, Peru. Wait, please, can you hold? Hold. Stop. Okay, I will say go, okay? Great. By the way, the man in black is a doctor with me 43 years, probably my closest friend. The musician is a flautist from Lima. And we've gone to Peru many years. And I wanted to show you this one because it's a park. And I've been in your parks here in Mexico City. And it's not in a hospital, it's not in a prison or a nursing home, but everywhere a clown is a useful friend. And so I was in the park and I was looking who might want a clown. And I noticed a young, older teenage woman in a wheelchair that was looking over down at the ground, and nobody made any attention to her. It's a very lonely position. And so I want to show you just the beginning, because what I say is a clowning is a trick to get love close. I don't ask permission to invade her space, and you will see me invade her very heavily. And I never have an expectation that something good will happen. I just know I'm going to try. Her name, this young woman's name is Kathy. So let's see. You'll also get to see my younger son. So can we... I wonder what happened to my glasses. Let me just... They're probably up here on the floor. Great. Okay, so now we can go. This is my younger son. Isn't he beautiful? He has clowned in 50 clown trips, and he studied clowning in Barcelona for 2 years. You can't really see her face, but she makes no expression until some time passes. Notice I can invade her and hold her hand and press my nose against her hand. I always learn friend, thank you, and I love you. So I am saying, te quiero, te quiero. If you know the disease cerebral palsy, children who are born with not good oxygen in birth, she has cerebral palsy, which often, as a diagnosis, has a flat face with no expression, which is why she still has no expression. Here, I'm doing a clown neurological exam, where I'm seeing what use she has of her body. Notice how close I can get without asking permission. I apologize for that big lettering in the middle of the screen. I spent 45 minutes with her, and you'll just see the first few moments. I want you to know that I have no idea what I am doing. And you can see this is the first moment she smiles. You will also notice soon, it's not uncommon with cerebral palsy that a person drools, meaning that water and spit comes out of their mouth. And you'll notice when the spit comes out of her mouth, she stops what she does and is embarrassed and wipes it away. Here you can see it coming, there the spit is dropping, and it is embarrassing for her. But I tell her, I love spit, and please do it on me. And that's far as I love drool. And you'll notice I'm not doing anything that takes any talent. I'm just, I say publicly that clowning is a trick to get love close. So I am telling her te quiero, I'm caressing her.
Oh, good. Like this, like this, like this.
And what you notice, instead of the person that was looking dead in her chair, she's actually a lovely spirit. And anyone can do what I did. There is no talent, there's just invasion. Okay, that's enough. Let's do the next one. And let me introduce it before you play it. This next one is going to be in Cuba, because for most of my life, it was against the law for U.S. citizens to go to Cuba, and I love to break the law. I don't believe in our laws. And so many times I've taken clowns to Cuba, and we always were under the wing of the National Children's Theater of Cuba, La Colmanita, Little Bees. And one time the leader of this group, who is just a magnificent man, said, Patch, I need your help. The most important, is it better if I stand up? The most important person in my life is dying. My grandmother. She made me the person I am, and she has cancer all over her body. She's in horrible pain all of the time, horrible pain, and no narcotics, morphine, nothing works. Would I please make a house call? And yes, of course, I was thrilled to make a house call. What's interesting is my brother, I only have one sibling, an older brother, name is Wildman, and my closest medical friend and friend of Gesundheit, which you saw in the other film, John, and also my oldest son, who lived in Chile for 7 years and speaks perfect Spanish, Catalan, and Portuguese, that he was the cameraman because he studied filmmaking in Chile. And the hour and a half we spent in this very poor family's tiny little house, this woman who was in pain all of the time had no pain. You see her laughing, and if you saw the whole hour and a half, you would see this beautiful, laughing woman. She died 2 months later. Okay, turn off the lights and let's start. Begin. Also, you can notice here, I see this man working, and with clowning you can always invade, so I stopped and give him a hand. And in a moment, I think it'll be obvious who my brother is. Did you guess? Four generations lived in these 2 rooms. Remember, she is suffering horrible pain all over her body and dies in 2 months. And notice I'm actually not doing anything. And it's here that I decided to use my moco. I'm a doctor. Again, I think that's enough because I want to make sure we have time for questions. She had no pain in the hour and a half I was there, and before that, no narcotic could stop any of her pain. And as I said, she died 2 months later of cancer. Okay, the next film. The next film is in the war in Afghanistan. The United States loves wars. We have 7 wars right now. I will never be a violent person no matter what. And when I knew the U.S. was going to invade Afghanistan, I was so heartbroken that I found sponsors to take 22 clowns from all 6 continents and 10 tons of aid, because it's also a very poor country. By aid, I mean medical supplies. And we went to Afghanistan for 4 weeks. I'm going to show you the plane landing. A film was made. This is actually from a film that's shown all over the world called Clowning in Kabul. And one of the scenes will be at the end of what I'm showing you, and it will be a hard thing for you to see. You don't have to watch it. It's of a child with 3rd-degree burns all over her body, again in a country with no pain medicine, and you can see how clowning touches this horrible moment. Roland. Okay, that's enough. We're on the plane there. The Italian Air Force flew us in there. Okay, thank you. The invasion. Look at those nice legs. And here, of course, is my strange brother. promise you never want to be in a war zone. There's a lot of violence in Mexico, and I want all of you to work to stop that violence. We had clowns from North and South America, Australia, Africa, Europe, and Asia. There were rooms in this hospital where 3 starving to death children per bed, 8 beds to a room. There was no pain medicine in the hospital. Look how crowded the rooms were. These are 3rd-degree burns. This woman is from Brazil, the other one from Italy. You know, we did not know her future.
8. Hoy, hoy, hoy. Hoy, hoy, hoy. Hoy, hoy, hoy. Vas, vas, vas. Vas, vas, vas. Vas, vas, vas. Hoy, hoy, hoy. Hoy, hoy, hoy. Vas, vas, vas. Finito, 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 finito. Vas.
Okay, I think that's enough. Would you like to see one more? I'm the same way. Okay, this last film that we'll show is from Armenia. An Armenian was very generous and paid for 30 of us to come to his country in the 100th anniversary of their time in their life of mass murder, where almost 3 million Armenians were murdered in genocide. And we went to many places. And one place we went to was to a place that was a residence for people that would be labeled labels I would never give a child, but they're labeled autistic, ADD, Asperger's syndrome, etc. And for most of these children, they live there all of their life. And my style, when I go to a place, I ask who is suffering the most. And so they took me to this young woman who had never spoken to anybody. She has a very difficult time staying still. They never saw her hug once, and she hugs me. In fact, they watched the hour and a half I spent with her, and they saw her do things with me they never saw her do with anybody. And they wanted me to give a class on what I did afterwards to the staff, but I don't know what I'm doing. I hope you see, I don't do anything. I'm there, I'm comfortable, and I'm going to use my toys in some way. So, in a way, I wish you could see the energy of this young woman for the whole hour and a half, because boy, is she busy with herself. But let's take a look. If you don't know where Armenia it is, if you know where Turkey is, you know where it is. Uh-oh, this, remember I wanted it to be fast forwarded to the, this is not the place. No, this is not the place. This is not the place. Okay, this is the place, and we'll go fast forward until oh no, this is not it. It was the previous one. No, this is, yes. Okay, this is it. And we'll go fast forward until I say normal speed. No, speed it up. Okay, ready, stop, and go. This is not the woman, but this is her. And if you wonder what I am doing, I'm mostly mirroring her. Never spoken a word in her life. She never in an hour and a half could stay still. how much fun this is to do. She had never hugged anybody in her life. This man in the background's a doctor with me for 30 years. And I want you to know I don't know what I'm doing. I'm doing what she is letting me do. And this kind of jumping, if you watch the whole film, there are periods where she does it for 4 or 5 minutes. I think that's enough. And if we could have the lights. Ma. Okay, you can ask any question you want. I have no privacy. So if you have a curiosity, I want to hear what it is. Do not be shy. Yes, ma'am. Thank you for volunteering.
How do you manage to not feel sad or angry?
Well, I have my own theory about the emotions. I think of the emotions as the sense organs of the mind. Okay, so I have all of the emotions. So if you ask me what I thought of Donald Trump or the capitalist system, you would hear that I have anger for it, but anger doesn't serve changing it. So what I think the emotions do is they go to the mind, and the mind says, what are you going to do with it? Where traditionally anger goes to the mind and just says angry, 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 angry. It goes to mind and says, what are you going to do? Do you understand what I'm saying? That the emotions are really telling you where you are with something, and instead of just living in the emotion, you can decide to create the person that deals with it. And the same is true with sadness. I was crying when I see this child that is burned. I cry every time. It's the right emotion, but it doesn't help me to change anything to be crying. So it tells me to get to work. Be nosy. There's a hand. Absolutely. If you didn't hear his question, do I think everybody can be happy? Here, let me tell you, again, because you won't hear these ideas from psychology departments, or I don't think there is mental illness. I think we have 3 things that have caused what people are now calling mental illness. The first is loss of tribe. Okay, because for 50 million years, we primates have lived in groups. I think nuclear family was the most dangerous and bad thing that humans have done because it doesn't work in any country. We are safest in a group of people. It also, mental illness is caused by a loss of connection to nature. The animals are out there in nature. The ants are living with the butterflies, living with the birds, living with the trees and the grass, and they live together. Where we have built buildings and kept everything away from us except for a house plant or a house pet. But most people in the United States, and I'm assuming since there's a lot of mental illness here in Mexico that I've seen, that People don't know you can go sit in a tree and stop your suffering. And that's what a bird does when it lands in a tree and enjoys itself and goes chirp, chirp, chirp. And the third thing is a disconnect from the arts. Most people do not now know how to use the arts to give them what they want as a person and to give them peace. One reason I know 4 hours of poetry by heart is it's poetry that so there's a poem by Pablo Neruda that if I meet a person at a party whose child or partner or grandparent just died or died 3 years ago and they're still suffering, I recite this poem of Neruda's, and almost every time it stops their suffering. But we can use the arts as a way so we can put on a piece of music that takes away our suffering. And I never think depression is an illness. I think it is a symptom of loneliness. That the causes of mental illness, in addition to what I've just said, are loneliness, boredom, and fear. I'm completely confused how anyone is bored with 500 billion brain cells. I've never known boredom. I cannot imagine you have nothing to think about or nothing to study. And the loneliness is, we are tribal. You have to have a circle of friends. You can have 10 circle of friends, 100 circle of friends. But in my interviewing patients for 51 years, in 4-hour interviews, 3% had self-esteem. That almost no one in the U.S. loves themselves. So if you want to have good mental health, love yourself. Ooh, can we all do that? Just tap yourself and go, ooh, me. Just try. I know it's hard, okay, but no one's going to punish you if you don't do it, but just take your fingers and tap yourself and go, I love me. Notice how hard it is because we don't love ourselves, okay? I love me. Go ahead, try it out. I love me.
I love me.
I love me. And so if we did that with comfort, we would never suffer. We can feel the pain of a parent dying, but if it's a healthy relationship with a parent, your parent does not want you to suffer the rest of your life because they're dead. They want you to take all the wisdom they gave you and use it in their life. Grieving, which is what people do after a person dies, is a celebration. If you didn't love them, you don't grieve. But you love them, so you weep, you do whatever your own spiritual life does, and that you'll notice that the tears water the fact that the truth is, everyone who's died in my life is right here. My mom, my dad, they're all here. You can't get rid of them. So notice that that's true. And the thing is, the mayfly lives 18 hours. Aren't you glad you live more than 18 hours? I am. I'm really glad I'm 73. Which is 18 hours times what to get to 73 years. Is that enough for you? Okay, thank you. Let's hear another question over here. Well, I mentioned that when I started. I said that when I was a child, younger than you, listen, okay? When I was a child younger than you, bullies would beat me up. Because I was a sissy boy, and they were manly boys. And I found out if I could make the bully laugh, they didn't hit their fool, which is kind of way the fool has been in history. And if you look at Shakespeare's King Lear, the fool is the only one that's able to make fun of the king. And so I started to clown because I saw if I made people laugh. And also in the 50s, when I was growing up, Jerry Lewis was the king of comedy. And if you watch his movies now, you'll see that I stole from him. Yes, and what do I think about Okay, this is an important question. I can honestly tell you, never in my life did God make any sense to me. If you looked at my library, I have 3,000 books on religions and spirituality. I think of myself as a very spiritual person, which for me means love in action. I wish Christians were Christians. If the U.S. was really Christians, we would have no wars. Because Christ's message is no war. So I've studied the religions, but I'm a person who thinks you were born, you live, you die. What are you doing with your life? That I think that it's living, 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 living. So I don't even think people are dying. You're living or dead. If I'm, it's important to know that it is true that other people, whether their spiritual or religious life is important to them, that I've been at 10,000 deathbeds as a clown, many of them where children are dying, and especially in Latin America that has such a strong connection to Christianity. I pray with patience, and I've many times seen it stop their suffering. And I pray and I say, do you mind if we pray? And put my hands together, and beautiful Christian prayer comes out. I also know many gospel songs, and I just have to think of what my spirituality is and translate it in the same way I would translate from English to Spanish. I translate from what I feel is true to the metaphor of what is true for them. And do you understand what I'm saying? But I think it's really important. I'm not trying to talk anyone out or into any belief. If you are Christian, Muslim, Jew, many other faiths, you can find in the teaching of that faith why they don't have to have any mental illness. And I use that all the time. Let's just see if there's somebody over here. We'll take some of these and be back to you, okay? Yes?
How do you feel when you realize you can make even someone that is suffering a lot or really sad happy?
Well, that I invade. Should we say it louder? Does everybody hear the question? Can you say it louder, and each person now say it louder? A microphone is a nice invention. Why not just stand and say it out loud? Okay, here comes the microphone. And don't make the microphone scare you from your question.
How do you feel when you notice or when you make someone that is suffering a lot or really sad, when you make that person laugh or happy?
Well, you saw it, right?
Yeah.
I will be honest with you. When I closed our doors to try to raise money to build our hospital and I wasn't seeing patients, within a year I realized there was an emptiness in me, that I had to do it. But I didn't have a clinic, I didn't have a hospital, and that's when I started the clown trips. And 35 years ago, as I mentioned, in order to stop public violence, I started to wear clown clothes all the time. So now if I'm on an elevator or a bus or anything and I see somebody hurting, I invade. And I'm an extreme extrovert, so it's very easy to invade. And I've done it, the first 100 times you invade, you're one kind of person. The 100,000th time you invade, you're a different person. You're differently ready, with different possibilities. And it's the richest part of my life, to care for nature, because I feel, if you study global warming, that almost nothing gives me any idea there will be humans in 100 years. The UN in October said we have 12 years. And so my partner Susan has just written a play called Stop That, which the language of the theater piece is stop everything you're doing and devote your life to climate change. And if you study climate change and you care about a future or you want children, get involved in climate change. It's thrilling. And I think that's what's so seductive. Do you want to say something about what clowning and easing suffering has meant to you? Would you like to? How do you feel, or what are you attracted when you're clowning to someone who is suffering?
To me, it's like...
Spanish?
You want me to say it in Spanish?
Yeah.
Ah.
Well, we're answering her question.
Bueno, para mí es como sentir así calientito el corazón. Porque sí, o sea, no le vas a quitar como el sufrimiento por completo. No le vas a quitar el sufrimiento por completo, porque pues sí están sufriendo, el sufrimiento es un proceso. Pero sí puedes hacer que un momento sea diferente o que un día cambie. Entonces, bueno, eso es para mí.
So what happens is I've done 190 clown trips, and many of them have repeaters. Like the Russia trip can have 2/3 of the people that have been on previous clown trips because they love to ease suffering. Have you ever done it? Gone to a friend who's hurting and gave them your love and you saw their hurting go away? And how'd you feel? And wouldn't you say it actually is bigger than the word nice? Fabulous. Unbelievable. Yes. And you had a question? Yes.
Me?
Okay, you and then you. And then you. Okay, we've got people up here. I'll just have to stay an hour or two more. Yes. Why don't we just go here?
What advice would you give us?
Microphone, sorry. Oh, the microphone is here, so
We go up. Down.
don't give up.
Ahorita te lo paso.
Can you recite the Pablo Neruda poem, please?
Okay. Okay, if any of you have had a grandparent, brother or sister or parent die, or somebody you love that died, and you're hurting, this is for you. He did not title many of his poems, and this is the English version, so listen to this. If I die, survive me with such sheer force that you waken the furies of the pallid and the cold. From south to south, lift your indelible eyes. From sun to sun, dream through your singing mouth. I don't want your laughter or your steps to waver. I don't want my heritage of joy to die. Don't call up my person. I am absent. Live in my absence as if in a house. Absence is a house so vast that inside you will pass through the walls and hang pictures on the air. Absence is a house so transparent that I, lifeless, will see you living. And if you suffer my love, I will die again. Can you say wow?
Wow.
If you understood that poem. In the power of those words, easily 80 or 90% of the people I've talked to who were suffering over someone died stopped their suffering. Are you one of those people? Has someone died in your life?
My cousin has cancer and they gave this to the first like weeks.
Well, and can you see how that poem could be useful? Because no one who loves wants you to suffer outside of grieving when they die. Okay, let's just go, where's the mic? Oh, okay, great.
What advice would you give us to be a successful person?
Define success in your terms. Okay, in the capitalist system, success means even if you're only number 2 in the big business, you're a failure. You must be number 1. Okay, or the fashion business, the makeup business would be you must look like this to be beautiful, and if you don't, you're not successful. So look at everything that you're measuring this word with and see what you want to define it as, and then With a patient, I say, did I try? Did I give my time? Did I never give up? And that's my success as both a clown and a doctor. And so I'm always successful. You know, when I say I will answer my mail, if you're suffering, there's some people who've written me 100 times. I never go enough. So define success in your terms, and then you'll be able to meet them. And if you're not meeting them, your force will insist that you do it. Okay.
We also have some questions of the YouTube video. I don't know if you can answer some of them. Also.
You mean the ones written down?
Yeah.
You know, look at the enthusiasm of the people raising their hands. So, I mean, that's how much time do I have? Okay.
Just one question of the ones that are...
Okay, I hope you choose your favorite. And remember, if you don't get to you, you'll write me. Okay, let's go.
This was a question asked by Alejandra Cadena, and she's saying that that if you really practice medicine right now, like as a doctor, medical doctor,
Well,
or
I'm
just
curious.
clowning.
Who has felt that while I'm here today, I have been practicing medicine? Raise your hand. Look how few. What the hell have I been doing here then? If a few people raise their hand, and this person wants a poem about death, and this person wants to know about whether or not can a person be successful or happy. Am I practicing medicine in my answer, or am I just a lecturer up here trying to fill my time? So listen to the absurdity of that question. I am never not a doctor. I'm never not a clown. I'm never not an activist. Everything I do. So if I'm only going to define me being a doctor in a clinic with a white coat, this blah, dude, it's been a while. But if you saw the letters I got, you would see, and these questions, most of these questions I could relate to medical questions. And I'm giving you my best shot. The difference is, instead of it being one-on-one, other people get to listen to them. Okay, where are we? Okay, we're going to get to you, or I'm going to die first. Okay, yes.
For how long were you in the KKK, and how could you stand to it? Because you're like really against hate and all of that stuff.
I didn't join them.
Oh.
I infiltrated. What is the Spanish word for infiltrate? Okay, so I was studying them. I can read a book about hate, but I wanted to hear their hatred. I wanted to try to get to know them, because many times what was interesting is they would also say they're Christian. You cannot hate and be a Christian. It is impossible. And so I wanted to hear from their mouths, and I wanted to understand them. I didn't join them, I just was a spy. And when you hate that strong and you're white, it's very easy to be a spy, because they have no thinking. You can't hate at a KKK's level of hate and have any use of your brain. So it was very easy to infiltrate. Okay, where's the microphone now? Bravo, thank you. You knew I wouldn't leave until she had it. And he has to be soon himself, yes. And this woman.
If you have been born in Mexico, do you think you would do what you're doing now?
Let's just for a second really think of what you're asking. How many Mexicans are there? 200 million? More. Okay, try to imagine First off, every mother loving her children is doing what I'm doing. Okay? If you're caring for a friend, you're doing what I'm doing. So, you're a Mexican, is that right?
Well, my parents are from Russia.
Are from?
Russia.
All right. Well, probably the Soviet Union at the time. Okay. So, in your experience in Mexico, what percent would you say if somebody asked you on stage, what percent are loving, giving people? Too much pressure. Okay, you don't have to answer. But the truth is, most mothers are that, at least while they're mothers. And I've seen thousands of Mexican mothers love their children in every country south of Texas but Suriname. And Brazil, of course, which speaks Portuguese. So, the thing is, most people, it's not in the news, okay? A person kicking a ball, now that's news. But a person loving a friend today, let's see if people will be honest. Raise your hand if you've been loving to someone else in the last month. Okay. Okay, and some that aren't raising their hand, I'll bet you are, they're just shy to raise their hand. Okay, so if we took this percentage to be the typical Mexican percentage, then we would have to say a hell of a lot. It's very different loving people if you don't love yourself. So even if you're a great mother, you may not think you're a great mother or a great friend or those things, because remember, love isn't taught in a single school in the world. So huge numbers of people have actually never studied it, read a book on it. There are books on it and some good ones. Most of the religious texts are books on love. But it's hard for me to find a Christian. If you're Christian means like Christ, so if you're like Christ, you're a Christian. And if you were, you'd really be a good person and no one would ever have to worry about you being violent. So, I can see you're a good person, aren't you?
Well, I think I do.
Notice how hesitant and how hard it is to say, "You bet, doctor." Go ahead and say that.
Okay. I prefer it.
I'm just trying to point out to people here that even if you're a wonderful... Are you her friend?
Yes.
Is she good at it?
Yes.
Okay, so your friend can admit it. And what I mean by self-esteem is that you love yourself as much as the people that love you love you. Okay, so try it out sometime. You'll like it. And it also gives you a lot of free time. Okay, so you made it. Okay?
What is your motivation to make people love?
Okay, now, what have I said that was my motivation? Okay? I opened with major motivation, right? My father died from war. He first died before he died from a bullet. He first died by being in a war, and it stole his soul. So that's dead while living. And that was very personal, because what it meant to me as their strange, non-macho man is that it appeared as if I thought my father didn't love me. That's how stupid I was. It was very self-centered. I wasn't thinking about him, and most of that came after he died. So, and then everything I studied, what I've seen and felt here, every moment of clowning. Thank And so everything is influencing it. Just pick up a newspaper. There's no good news newspaper. There are some cute ones that are published, but they're not daily newspapers. In the United States, the famous newspapers, the front section are international murders and horrible things people are doing to each other in corporations. And then there's the local section, which are local murders and horrible things people are doing with each other. And then there's the sports section, multimillionaires playing with their balls. And that's the news here today. Yes, sir.
What is your opinion about the stereotypes?
About the
Stereotypes?
stereotypes. Well, I've used some here as an attempt to communicate. When you have a lot of information and you only have 2 hours, you might use some stereotypes. Okay, so you've heard me criticize capitalism. I see it as the worst disease of history and the cause of our extinction. I'm not saying business is bad, okay, but one could hear me saying business is bad. That's not what I'm saying. Capitalism stole the word rich to say when you're rich, it's money. Where truth is, when you have a friend, you're rich. So I'm one rich son of a gun. How we doing? Okay.
Hey, like, where did all that, like, love to give came from?
Where did love in general come from?
No, like, where did the, like, inspiration for loving and all that came from?
Well, I think for me, I had a fabulous mother. I never saw my mother angry. I never saw my mother unkind. My mother was a strict 19th century person. So if you burped, so as a clown I can burp whenever I want to. But my mother, if you burped in her presence, she never gave up until you said, excuse me. Okay, and so because she was never mean, nasty, angry, unkind, we made fun of it and would make her do lots of dances until we would say, excuse me. And farts didn't exist. And Mother was famous for what we call the staccato fart, where she would walk across the room and go, and both of her sons are on the floor laughing, but she couldn't acknowledge their laughing because that would mean somebody farted. And so my mom was a school teacher and so loving. And she never said be an activist. She never really, she was from a racist state and those things, but she made me a person who wanted to be kind and generous and all of those things. And then, you know, if you're observant, have you seen a person beat up another person? Did you want to be the person that was beating up? No. And I'll bet you've been beaten up. Yeah. And would you have rather been the person that beat you up or the receiver? Because I don't picture you beating up many people. Okay? So I'm complimenting you. You understand that, right? And so, at what age, I'm curious, who thinks at 6 that love had meaning to their life? Who at age 6 would say that they were at least thinking about love? All right? Most likely it was because of a parent, and more likely because it was a mother. Or maybe they heard the word. But by the time you're 40 or 50, love has had a huge amount of experience in your life, and you may have felt you never were loved even though you're on your 4th marriage. So love is something you're constantly looking at. And if you direct your love it can be beautiful all the time, instead of feeling like a victim. You know, and I'm really recommending for men to know something about love, because most men, in my scientific study, 85% of men are dangerous to women. Sorry. 20 to 50 million men every day are having sex with a child. My youngest gonorrhea is 3. Imagine what I think of that. We could go on about my thoughts about masculinity. Yes. Oh wait, where's the mic? Here, and then we'll remember this corner over there. Oh, we're going to go around again. Woo. Okay.
You said that you had never had a bad day in 50 years.
55.
In 55 years. How do you do that?
How do I say that?
No, how do you do that? How do
Okay.
you live like every day perfect life?
Okay, there are different layers of what I could say. One, I am a thinker. I personally think by thinking that everything you are comes from thinking. So another way to answer your question is I make me. I think because I want to be a loving activist. I think what makes loving? Gratitude. So when I was 18, I say metaphorically, I dove into the ocean of gratitude and never found the shore. You understand the metaphor? So I'm thankful. You know, at 73, just to be alive, I'm really thankful. But because I've done yoga, weightlifting, and aerobics for 45 years, I feel 35. Because someone looked at all 3.5 billion women and gave me the partner for them. And she loves me and lets me love her. So gratitude, having a full sense of wonder and curiosity. I love bugs, so I have 600 books on bugs. I am so full of wonder. I mean, because all humans look alike, you know, a little color change, a little height change, but we all look alike. But if you look at an atlas of insects, you know, they've had 500 million years. And when we have 500 million years, we may look something different than what we look like today. So wonder, curiosity, passion, hope. Boy, are there great poems about hope. And so all of that is, so I'm receiving through the arts and nature and love, and I'm also pursuing. And that those things, I don't find hatred useful. I don't hate Trump. I do want him not to be president. I don't want to hurt him or have other people hurt him. I would put him in jail because he's broken the law. And that the laws that he has broken has caused very bad consequences. And I'm really hoping he's not reelected. But if I had to hurt him to stop it, I can't. So in the idea of making myself, this is, you know, it's interesting, schools don't teach thinking. They tell you to take the test, respond to the test this way. But what I mean by thinking, I think 3% of our adult population in the United States ever thinks. I literally think only 3% of the U.S. is thinking. Because you don't think because you have 500 billion brain cells, you think because you've trained it in the same way you can train yourself to be loving. And that you become a self that you make, not a self. So what does the U.S. society want to make you? A compliant, non-resisting consumer. And so everything they do is to direct you that way. And if you don't take charge of your thinking, you'll be their way. So you'll watch the popular TV show. You'll root for your popular team. That. I mean, how did Trump get elected? The amazing thing is that at least one person voted for him. But in fact, millions of people voted for him. And I'm sorry, they're not thinking. Ever. So I'm trying to celebrate ideas and thinking and the knowledge that you can become the thing you decide. It doesn't mean you can decide to be the Nobel Prize winner or the #1 soccer player. It means you can decide to be full of wonder and curiosity and passion and hope. You can study romance and have a fabulous romance and leave a relationship that isn't fabulous, especially if you can't make it fabulous. We're moving around? Yes, thank you.
Hi. Two things. First, thanks for existing. And second,
Thanks, Mom.
We have two questions. The first one is, how do you deal how do you fight your darkness and like the world's darkness when it's so hard that it's like hard to be happy?
Okay, I really want you to hear, and this isn't a big deal, it simply was a decision, like the decision to exercise. Okay, so I can sit down here, spread my legs on the floor, and sit on the floor and put my face on the floor. Only 1 in 10,000 men can do that. I'm not doing it because I'm special, but because I took 5 years of stretching to get there. I actually don't go through a bad period, because at a very early age, I took charge of my thinking. And if you're having trouble understanding what I'm saying, it's having trouble understanding what I mean by thinking. So I'm not going to do something that then makes me think I'm a bad person. You understand what I'm saying? That so I never want to win with Susan. I'm never thinking, oh yeah, I got her this time. You know, here's what I say, if you want great romance, listen to everything that's important to them once you have a person that's in your compatibility. Hear everything that matters to them and exaggerate your response to every single one of them. That's one of the recommendations.
When you were in med school, what was your study?
Wait, she said 2 questions.
Yeah, well, I have one question. What do you think about the current violence against women? Is it promoted by the same society we live in?
Well, it's supported by what society?
Well, the same society.
No, the male. Women don't support violence to women. You know, when I was growing up in the 50s, there was no feminism. And that started thinkers started it in the 50s, but it didn't really come to the fore until the 70s. Okay, now there's a sisterhood. So in my medical school class in 1971, 130 people, 8 were women, and there was nastiness to them almost every day by the professors. Oh, there's some women in the class. Okay, so the language of it and speaking up for it, I'm embarrassed for how men are. You know, and I hope I'm not stepping out of bounds here. Most men think sex is a 3-minute experience. And if you watch male pornography, that's what it is. And so I recommend for men to watch female pornography, because there the kissing and touching lasts a couple of hours before anything else happens. And so women have been fighting. And I've actually been old enough to have experienced that, to where I can tell you, if things weren't great 3 days in a row with my Susan, she would leave me. So I'm going to make sure they're great every day. And that the idea that it was a man's world, it's hard to say it's a man's world now. It is a man's world relative to the hell. You know, that if I had a magic wand, I'd put women in charge of everything for the next 1,000 years. Did you hear me correctly? The next 1,000 years. because I can say every problem in history was caused by men. Okay? When I say every problem of history was caused by men, I actually mean it. And sure, you can bring up a few people, but it's not very impressive who you bring up. And I've never heard of a woman rape a 3-year-old. I mean, I am really hostile to child sexual slavery, hugely. And so, speaking up, it's why I say these things publicly, because it doesn't matter to me if anyone likes what I'm saying. But because of the kind of question you're asking, I'm letting you know that if we're going to have any hope for human survival, we're going to feminize the world. Any hope for human survival. And if you're a man that wants to be good to a woman, feminize yourself. And I mean that. And if you're a woman dating a sexist pig, get rid of them. Don't think you're going to convert them. And maybe by getting rid of them, if they really liked you, they may question themselves, especially if you're articulate for why you left them. But if you want to be a man good to women, study women, read women's nonfiction and fiction, and become a man that can be great for women. So every time you hear, because when I grew up, almost every adult male, if I would hear their language, was sexist. They would describe a woman by her shape, and they would let you know what part of their shape they liked, and that was the language men used. I never heard men in the 50s talk about women in a way that I ever wanted to talk to them. And I couldn't get dates because I was a weird nerd, weed, dork, sissy boy. And I wondered, why did any women go out with these macho jerks? But I didn't want to believe it was because women were stupid. But I noticed the world that I grew up in was a macho world. You don't have to agree with anything I'm saying. Please understand that.
A ver, yo sé que todos tenemos muchas preguntas, pero por cuestiones de agenda de Patch, solamente tenemos tiempo para una más. ¿Sí? Entonces, Romina preguntará, nada más le pido yo a Mariana que le comente a Patch.
So, for the time, we just have time for one more question. So, she was going to...
Can we do two, because I did promise this person over here in the corner.
Okay, okay, we can do 2, and then we should go.
Okay. You understand, I would stay here till nobody was in the room. I am fed by your energy, so I'm an energized person all the time. Yeah.
When you were in med school, what was your specialty? Like, were you a cardiothoracic surgeon or general surgeon?
The truth is, my specialty was trying to be a human being in a school where 95% of my professors were rude, arrogant jerks. So there wasn't a specialty was to try to be a human being and to try to be a doctor that cared about people. It was much more horrible if you saw the Patch Adams movie than the horror you saw in the movie. Almost all the professors I saw, no matter whether they were pediatricians or surgeons or whatever they were, treated women as sex objects, that they would be nasty from hierarchy and that sort of thing. So my specialty is to be human. I'm a general practitioner because I started a pediatric residency, but after the first year, I realized I can't be with these assholes anymore. The doctors were so, it was just impossible for me to be silent. You can probably get that, right? I say things that I don't care if people don't like me saying them. And there was nothing in a residency. You'd think pediatrics, the doctors would be nice and cute for kids. And some were nice and cute for kids, but they were jerks to the nurses and to that. So I just couldn't do it anymore. And there was this one woman over here that was going to have a question. She has a microphone.
When one of your patients die, how do you help the family to move on?
Well, I'm with them long before they die. I like to be there. And I'm fun to be with if you're going to die. Who would like a fun death? Raise your hand. A fun death. You've got to die. Do you want it to be fun? Yes. Okay, I am fun to die with. I could give you an extreme story if you would like it. Okay, let me give you an because when our hospital was open, I was trying to understand that. I want to be available for them, so if they're Christian, I become Christian with them. If whatever it is. Okay? In the 60s, a lot of teenagers ran away from home. Huge numbers. That's what the 60s was about. They ran away to California or to join a commune or something. And so this boy ran away from home at 14. The parents at home, he couldn't live. And he traveled around and hitchhiked and did all that. And he, at 17, got a rare mesenchymal tumor in his chest that by the time I saw him was going to kill him. He'd done the surgery, he'd done the treatments, and he was going to die. And he was frightened of dying, and so I asked him, what do you want? You know, how can we make your dying fun? And this is a true story. He wanted 5 naked people in bed with him while he died. Imagine how easy it was to find them. So I would go out and say, again, I need 4 other naked people. And everyone raises their hand because of the context and the vibration in our hospital. They knew it wasn't dirty. This man was dying. They knew him because they were in the house with him, with us. And that's what he wanted. It was a good one.
You got it?
What?
You got it? Is he that happy?
Oh, yeah. I mean, okay, let's say you were dying, and you haven't thought about your dying because you're a young man, maybe. But imagine if you were dying and there were 5 naked people in bed with you. Can you see it being more fun than the dying you're thinking of now? You don't know. Okay, think about it. And the thing is, most of them were not that kind of extreme. Most of them were okay, so if you believe in heaven, I would really support heaven. Paradise, you know, dielessness, and all of those things. And I had a lot of literature and paintings and all of those things about eternity and paradise. So I think that's a lot why religion was invented. Because we die, people, I think, noticed that religion was really useful in dying. And it's interesting, it's really useful in dying even for people who aren't really believers, but they'll say they're believers. Because if you're a real believer, you don't die. As one great poet says, the body dies, the body's beauty lives. And so I like people long before they die to think about it. I can share books about it, or, you know, that Zorba the Greek, one of my favorite 19th century writers, or 20th century writers, a Greek named Kazantzakis, they made a great movie, please see it, Zorba the Greek with Anthony Quinn. Who's seen it? Some of the geezers in here probably seen it. And Zorba is this great alive Greek. He says, life is trouble, only death is not. To be alive is to undo your belt and look for trouble. And so it's a really good movie to introduce people to some of that.
I just want to say something. It's not a question. I like to say that I started it, but lately people have been telling me that it doesn't exist. So listening to you today had just restored my faith in all that. I guess what I'm just trying to say is thank you.
Yes, and thank you. It's why I do it. It's why if the school said, let's do it another 3 hours, I would do it. You understand? But I want you to know, I didn't do anything that you didn't make yourself. So I didn't make you like it. You went to your mind, and your mind liked it. Okay, so don't blame me. That's what I'm saying. And I think if this is it, I'm going to run out of here quickly and escape you.
Okay, guys, let's give him a
Bien, con el mismo orden que entramos, vamos a salir porque somos muchos. Ahorita les vamos a indicar, pero ambas secciones saldrán a receso. Ya les diremos cómo y en qué momento. Preparatoria, les pido por favor a los profesores me ayuden a abrir las cortinas primero de las puertas. Y les pido por favor a los maestros que me ayuden justo a hacer que en orden puedan bajar los de prepa primero por ambas salidas, por favor.
Adrián. ¿Podemos hacer un intento por tomar una foto? A ver. Imposible, ya me dijeron que no. Ah, ok. Solo gracias por acompañarnos a llegar al corte. Yo creo que a lo mejor... Ya está bien. Ya lo voy a cerrar.